right, well, we're here with Mr. Lew Tabackin, who's the guest of our Harlem Speaks interview series, which is the flagship series of the National Jazz Museum in Harlem. My name is Greg Thomas, and on behalf of Executive Director Loren Schoenberg and Co-Executive Director Christian McBride and the staff, hi Peter, and and board of the National Jazz Museum in Harlem, I like to again say welcome. Thank you, thank you. And as I said, we are fortunate to have a gentleman who I've wanted to have here for quite a while. He knows this is true. We've
Right,
talked
yeah.
about this for quite a while, ever since his
Trying to
wife-
get dates together.
Yeah, trying to get dates together. He's a busy man, touring all over the world. And I've been, following him for, I guess I'll say it.
Ever since you were a little kid, right?
No, I wasn't a little kid, but it was the late 70s when I was a teenager and started to, really get into the Toshiko Akiyoshi Lew Tabackin Big Band and your wonderful playing, man. As I told you, I've, have LPs of some of your dates, you and Phil, and you have one with playing the flute on the cover and such. But that's enough about me. We're here to talk to and hear about Mr. Lew Tabackin, which I'd like you to welcome right now.
Thank you all.
Okay, so welcome, Lew. So we finally did it. Finally got you here. Okay. So listen, we start right in the beginning. Tell us when and where you were born.
Well, I was born in South Philadelphia. I kind of defined the area a little bit because Philadelphia is a neighborhood reality.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to definitely talk about that. I want to make sure that the folks in the back can hear you.
Oh,
So when
okay.
you
Sorry
stand
about
up,
that.
and we have the air conditioning and all that stuff.
I will try to project a little better.
Yes.
I play the saxophone and the flute pretty loud, but I have to learn how to project more, verbally, vocally, or whatever you want to call it. In any case, I was born in Philadelphia, and
When?
1940,
Okay.
believe it or not.
Wow. Okay.
And well, it was a rough time, It was,
You're 75?
your addition is usually sad, my man.
Oh, I'm thinking, wow, 15. Why am I 71?
Okay. That's
Yeah, real bad.
I have time.
Real bad.
It's bad
Where did I
enough.
get that from? I thought 2015.
Yeah, he's ahead of us. Greg is like a tomorrow person.
I guess.
So in any case, I grew up in a rather humble, so to speak, and trying to survive, trying to not get beat up too often. And
Tell us about your family. Your
family,
your mom and dad.
blue collar, non-musical.
What are the names?
My father worked in a greeting card factory, did gold leaf work.
Huh. Okay.
In fact, when I was a teenager, one summer I worked and he got me a job in his factory. In those days, scale was $1 an hour.
Wow.
I worked for 40 hours, made $40. But it's kind of a little out of context, but the best part of this gig was that we should have lunch in this place. It was in a black neighborhood, and they had a diner, and it had a jukebox. And the jukebox had all this great music, like Diminuendo, Crescendo, and Blue, Duke Ellington, a lot of Gene Ammons, Miles Davis, Walking. So to go there and have lunch and hear all this great music, and which was, enabled me to survive my couple months as a working person. I really was pissed off because I took away from my practice time. But
how old were you then? When
I guess I was 15.
Okay.
But
And what's your dad's name?
my father's name is Isidore.
Okay.
And my mother's name was Sarah.
Okay.
And so anyway, that's how I began. I started playing the saxophone.
Wait, I didn't ask you about that.
Oh, you didn't? Well,
No,
okay.
we're gonna get there.
Sorry about that.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Brothers and sisters.
One sister, she was deceased.
Okay. Her name?
Her name was Betty.
Older or younger than you?
Younger.
Okay. So your mom and dad weren't musical. What about your sister?
No.
No. Okay. South Philly. Tell us about South Philly.
Well, I went to. I tell you, it was kind of rough. It was kind of a rough neighborhood,
Okay.
and like I was like.
You're talking about in the 50s, basically in the 50s,
I'm
right?
talking about. Well, I'm talking about the.
Or even
Well,
the
40s.
40s, yeah.
40s. Well, 40s, and being like I was Jewish, so like that was, and I had to pass a Catholic school to get to my school, and that was always a great difficulty because those kids were a little bigger. Their school went a little farther, and the nuns used to beat the shit out of them and hit them with hit their hands and tell them that Jews killed Jesus. So they were really ready, and so I was
Wow. Yeah.
so that was a trauma. Life was quite traumatic. So anyway,
Jesus.
I survived that, and I
Okay.
thought, should I go on or should I wait till you ask me a
No,
question?
no. Well, no, you don't have to wait till,
Okay.
but I just didn't want to jump right to the plan. We're
Okay,
gonna
okay.
get there. Let's get some background.
You really want some really heavy background, yeah.
Yeah, we got 2 hours, man. Right?
That's true.
We
That's
got 2 hours, So, so that part of it was rough. What was about your upbringing in South Philly do you remember fondly?
not a hell of a lot,
Okay.
but
Okay.
and anyway, I decided that it would be nice, to play an instrument. I don't know why.
How old were you?
I was in junior high school,
Okay.
and the music program in Philadelphia public school system, you could borrow an instrument. So I figured maybe I'd play a clarinet, something. I don't know why. I didn't. It just sort of be something to do. The only thing I could get was a flute. They had 3 people that wanted an instrument, and the criterion for getting this flute was whoever could make a sound. Now one guy made a pretty loud sound. I made a little, wimpy sound, and there was a girl. She couldn't make any sound, so I was second. The guy that made the sound didn't want it, so I got stuck with it, and that was an instrument. I had no idea what a flute was or what it was supposed to sound like. I didn't even know how to hold it. They gave me the school system provided a teacher. That's the good news. The bad news, the teacher was totally incompetent. So I spent years and years unlearning what he taught me. I used to play the flute like this on my shoulder.
What?
I thought that's what you did. I never even saw anyone play a flute.
Wow.
So that's how my quote-unquote musical career began. It was kind of very interesting.
What was your relationship? Look, you talk about Catholic school now. Were the Catholic school students, was it a mixed group? Was it white, black?
Well, there weren't many black people, and the ones
In the Catholic school or in South Philly?
for none in the Catholic school.
Okay.
But I don't know. This is kind of interesting. I haven't thought about it, but in my childhood, like black kids were the allies because we were both oppressed,
Yeah.
So we were
And
kind of we were kind of like kindred spirits in a sense. So that was
That
a
happened in
different,
New York.
different dynamic. Until later on, everything changed. But we get into that. But as a child, a black person was automatically thought of as an ally.
You felt this way and your family?
Well, I don't know. I never got into it with my family, but I did as a child, as a young person. I felt that way, and so that's one of the positive things.
Okay.
And it was like blonde people, you know.
All around you, blonde people.
Blonde people are the ones that I
Give you a
remember,
rough time?
I'm going to say this, I remember when I was playing with Freddie Hubbard, we're doing tours together. Freddie, you know, once in a while he would get like, he'd talk and he, you know, get, you know, a little, what's the right word? He would say things that, you know, relatively important things. He would say, you know, it was only been a few years since I can actually, like, talk to white people, in a sense. He said I was like, it took a long time to overcome the hostility that he felt, whether rightly or wrongly. And so it was the same way with me when I would see a certain physical type, you know, it would take me a minute to like say, oh, it's cool. I once had a girlfriend that kind of coloration, whatever that is.
Right.
And it actually even took a minute, you know what I mean?
How would you describe it? Not just in terms of blonde, but I mean, is there a certain phenotype that you're talking about?
I don't know. It's like light hair and kind of blue eyes and kind of like, I don't know. It was.
Are you talking? I
those-
mean, because I like to get into ethnic specificity. So I mean, are you talking like WASP?
Waspy,
ethnic?
or kind of like I don't know. I don't know. It was just like an image
Okay.
that seemed like that, you know, took a while to warm up to. You had to get past the initial, like what Freddie was talking about.
Right.
When he said that, I related to that right away, because you have to get over the initial reaction and try to get, you know, deal with, you know, the real person.
Right.
Put it
This is interesting because, I mean, this is like the foundation. First of all, there have been scientific studies that show that human beings naturally have a problem with others who are different. That's just like a natural thing in us. You had experiences that then, on a fundamental thing, gave you, and the same thing happens with white folks and black folks, maybe, you know, all kind of ethnic variations, and not just in the U.S. So one of the things that I like to discover is, what did it take for you to be able to, as you got older, and you knew that was an issue, and you knew that the best thing to do or the right thing to do was to deal with a person based on them as individuals and not just based on the way they look. When did you?
It didn't take that long.
Okay.
Once I got out of that environment, you
Okay.
know, and I moved on. I got into music. Basically, music was a liberating factor. When I got into music, I didn't think about that. That was all of a sudden I didn't even deal with those things. I just dealing with trying to figure out how to play and trying to, you know, in a way, I had this in the back of my mind. Part of the motivation was if I really work hard and I really can play well and I can get out of my environment, and that was part of factor. Now I get all these, you know, social media things. People from my past, they come out.
Facebook.
They want to get together and they want to. I'm not interested in the past. I'm interested in. Now's the time, Charlie Parker.
Yeah.
There is only a moment. I'm thinking about now. I'm thinking about tomorrow. I'm not so interested in what happened. You know, relationships from 50 years ago. But when people get older, they tend to want to look back. And to them were the good old days. To me, they weren't that good. Today is now is the time.
Ben Webster, Sonny Rollins, and I know you can't deny it.
No, well,
You can't deny it.
we can get into that later.
Yeah. I mean,
Once we get out of my hood, my old hood.
Well, yeah. Now I understand why you zipped right
That's
past
right.
there. But I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, see, yeah, great.
Put on the brakes, man.
But
I understand why.
Yeah, come on. You know.
I didn't know.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't know. But you know, we really need to. It doesn't have to be chronological, but it's important to kind of get a background and context. Okay, so are we ready? All righty. Okay, so the first instrument was the flute. Almost like by a fluke of sorts, in the sense of it could have been a clarinet,
Yeah.
it could have been a flute,
Yeah,
You were misinstructed.
exactly.
Okay.
Quite malinstructed.
Malinstructed, specifically. So this is junior high. Remember the name of the junior high school?
Oh, wait a minute. I get them both mixed. My elementary
school?
school and my
Junior high?
junior high school mixed up. Oh, furnace, like a furnace.
Oh, okay. For your junior high.
Junior high, yeah.
Okay, you remember the elementary?
Sharswood
Sure.
was a block away from my house.
Okay. And high school? What high school?
High school was South Philly High.
South Philly High.
That was a famous South Philly High that produced all the 1950 teenage idols.
Tell us who you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm talking about. Let's see. One, my classmate was Frankie Avalon. Frankie Avalone, his name was.
Okay.
Let's see, who else? Bobby Rydell, Chubby Checkers, Fabian, all those guys. So that's that was a really horrible era. It produced they were looking for cute kids, to promote, and they had American Bandstand and all that stuff, which was totally corrupt.
Uh-oh.
And that it was, but how the school was cool. Like, with basically, it was like the first couple of years was not co-ed. It was a girls' school and a boys' school. Now, when you separate the sexes, the instructors can be a little bit more loose. They don't have to watch exactly what they say or how they act. So it was kind of interesting when they made it a co-ed situation. All of a sudden, everything had to be more formal and a little more,
So like the first 2 years?
Yeah, first 2 years, and I started basically I started to play the tenor when I was 15.
Okay.
And I went in. Well, I'm in high school, and I played lousy flute. I could hardly play, but they would have jam sessions like between after orchestra class and the next class and after school, and I hear these guys playing, and I said, boy, let me try it. So I would try to play. I must have been really horrible, but it really felt good. I'm playing, and it really felt really great. So
Right.
that was the beginning,
Okay.
and then.
This is of tenor.
No, I'm playing flute at this
Oh,
point.
flute.
I-
Oh,
I-
but
yeah,
you're
I
trying
went-
to improvise and jam.
Yeah, I'm trying to improvise, and
Right.
so I'm trying to do the best I can. But I must have been really terrible. And then I decided to get a tenor. In the meantime, I played a little clarinet. I took some clarinet lessons,
Okay.
and I decided to get a tenor. And there was actually Frankie Avalon. He says his father had a teenage nightclub.
Okay.
And he says, I'm starting a big band.
Frankie Avalon.
Yeah, I need another tenor player. I said, oh, well, I'm getting a tenor, so I'll be cool. And actually, I got this tenor. For anyone who's interested, it was a Con 10M,
Oh, wow.
which, if any saxophone players, you know about that. It was,
Yeah.
Lester Young played a Con. He played it earlier than a 10M, but later a 10M. And I never forgot it. At that point, the person who I liked was my first love, quote unquote, was Al Cohn.
Okay.
And I knew exactly what I wanted to sound like.
Huh.
So I got this Con tenor with a Brillhart number 4 rubber mouthpiece and a number 2 symmetric cut reed.
All right. Yeah.
Never forgot it. And after a couple hours, I could actually get a respectable sound,
Oh.
which is important when sometimes I do a class or I have to talk to students. The first thing, you have to know what you want to sound like.
Hmm.
If you know what you want to sound like, you'll get there at some point. Some faster than others, but you can practice 10 hours a day. But if you don't have a concept, it's useless. You have to have a concept. So that was my first approach.
Let me ask you something. Okay, so if your first idol hero on the horn was Al Cohn, then you obviously listened to the music.
Well, okay, basically what it kind of worked out like there was a kid that lived next door to me, a little older, and he had he was kind of a jazz fan. In those days, jazz and college students, jazz goes to college, whatever.
Right.
So it was hip.
It was hip at the
It was
time.
hip, yeah. In the 50s, jazz was hip. So he had a lot of records, and I would get to hear some. So I got into it, and then he had some, flute guys playing flute like Frank with Hank Jones and Bags, like those things, Opus to Funk and all that stuff. So oh wow, okay. And then listening to all this stuff, and I go out and listen to people, and for some reason in Philadelphia there was an Al Cohn cult. Believe it or not, all the white saxophone players were into Al Cohn. And
what about Zoot and Stan Getz?
Well, but some reason Al in Philadelphia was just some kind of I don't know, was a connection. And so.
Do you know where he was from? I don't know.
Who?
I said, do you know where he was from? I don't know where he was.
New York, Brooklyn.
He's from Brooklyn. Okay.
So anyway, I would run into, Frank Tiberi? Frank Tiberi used to lead Woody Herman's band.
Right.
At a point, and he was a big Al Cohn guy.
Okay.
He was older than me, so he showed me what records to buy. I didn't have much money. I could only buy one.
Okay.
And it's kind of rough. But so I kind of got into that, and then I would like sneak into jazz clubs.
Okay. Oh, you did that too? I used to do that too.
Yeah, I mean, you had to be 21 in Philly.
Wow.
But so I would sneak in. By the time I was 16, I would sneak in. And
now, when did you work in the greeting card factory?
I was 15.
So it's around the same time.
In the summertime.
So when did you pick up the horn when you were 15? During the summer?
I'm trying to remember. Maybe been I don't quite remember.
Before or after?
I don't.
Just around the same time.
I think it was around the same time.
So,
but I do remember though that the following summer, I got a gig. I worked in a striptease club.
Oh, really?
In the southwest Philly. I used to had to play. I made more money than my father made. Like I made $80 a week.
Wow.
And all I had to do was play the blues, and play honky tonk, and Harlem Nocturne.
3 tunes.
3 tunes, and that was like, but you play all night, and like,
Right.
so it was like, it was okay. I mean, it was not bad. And,
For a couple of reasons.
The scenery was cool.
I was gonna say, for a couple of reasons,
But I had to learn how to
Close your ears, young
I had to learn how to. I had to learn how to sublimate sexual energy, So that was
because you're probably going through puberty at that time.
Well, whatever it was, man, I had to like.
Really? No, really, yeah. I mean, look, because I've said this on camera a couple of times, because when I got into the music, I was like 14, 15 when I just went crazy over the music. And I really feel that it was me going through puberty at the time and me having an emotional connection with the music. I really feel that those were connected in some way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Anyway, so I
during
did.
that time.
Yeah, I mean,
But the reason I want to bring that back up, when you worked that summer, who did you say you were hearing on the jukebox?
Well, I was hearing like a lot of Gene Ammons, Canadian Sunset, and all that stuff. It was hot, and Miles Walking 2 parts.
Yeah.
I think some Duke stuff.
Okay.
Diminuendo Crescendo. I mean, it was like, what was interesting was observing that like, these were poor, like middle class, we want to call it, not lower than middle class
Okay, lower middle
people,
class.
whatever,
Mhm.
working black people,
Right.
and but it was the music was a part of their everyday life. See, that's what is gone. Like, because people, that was like ordinary to listen to this music. It wasn't like going out of your way to
Right.
hear it,
Right.
and it was really kind of like, what's the right word? It was impressive
Mm.
that this cultural experience was happening, and people, it's just like, well, and then when you played in a club, you know, it'd be a lot of black people playing in an audience, and they knew some playing somebody would come, oh, the drummer is, he's rushing, he's playing ahead of the beat tonight, and well, you know, like
They
it was
it's
really
like
it was the audiences were different. I mean,
well, one thing I think is important to say is that maybe socioeconomic status,
Mm-hmm.
they may be on a certain level, but in terms of their musical culture and their taste,
Mm-hmm.
was on a very high level.
obviously. I remember. Well, it's hard to keep on a track. I mean, but I was in Canada doing a thing, and my trio at the time with Danny Richmond and I forgot who the bass player, maybe Jay Anderson. I don't remember. And
Okay.
we went into a school, and we were talking about, you know, heroes, and there were a lot of black kids, and they didn't never heard any of the jazz greats, and looking to other cultures, looking for somebody came up with a black guy in the time of Bach that wrote Baroque music. Okay, that's wonderful, but okay, well, what about Louis Armstrong? What about Duke Ellington, Charlie Parker? I mean,
What about
what a
here in
rich
Canada? What about Oscar Peterson?
well, whatever. What a
Yeah.
rich heritage,
Right.
and I was shocked that people didn't know, and it's kind of like that, becoming like that now. I mean,
Not
maybe you know, your organization is helping. Maybe
Trying.
Witten, some way, is doing some good in that respect to kind of make people aware of the cultural heritage.
Right.
But anyway, that was impressive to me, and so anyway, I'm trying to play, I'm trying to learn how to play, and I started hearing other people. I started listening to Sonny Rollins, and I was, you know, it's the way he approached time, the way he could play so far back, and he said, how is he going to come? How's he going to get back? You know, I mean, how's he going to take it back?
Right.
And so I used to try to do that. I used to try to go so far behind the beat and see if I could recover, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And then I heard about, I'm around 16, and I heard about this guy John Coltrane. So I tried to. I hear he was playing someplace in West Philadelphia. So I went there, and I tried to get in. It wasn't so easy, because I was totally wrong. Wrong environment, wrong age, wrong color, everything.
Right.
So,
Just
but I could,
wrong.
everything was wrong. But I peeked in, and I could feel this thing, this amazing kind of, it's how to describe it, spiritual energy and something that I never felt before coming out of this place. And so I got to hear a little bit, and that, you know, unfortunately I couldn't stay, but I got to hear a lot of music. And the good thing about Philadelphia, it was a great place to hear music.
Okay.
It was just we had two major clubs, Pep's and the Showboat, about a block apart. Behind those two places were local clubs where local players could play, like myself, eventually. And anyway, that was. So then I got into Coltrane.
Okay, hold on for 1 second. Let me ask you this. This will be the last, if you don't mind, family question. What did your family, your immediate family, think of this music thing that you were?
Well, they were supportive. They didn't understand it. I remember a guy came over to pick me up to take me to a gig, a drummer, and he's telling my mother, "Boy, your son is bad." And she got pissed off, man.
I bet she did. Talking about her baby.
He's bad, and like, so that was, so that's how the cultural, that's how the cultural reality existed at that point.
Right.
But they were cool, I'm sure it wasn't, they would have been happier if I did something more normal. But they were supportive, and it wasn't, there was no real resistance. I had to do a little education,
Okay.
but that was cool.
All right. So, I mean, Philly has such a list of great players, especially at that time. I mean, you mentioned Train, you had Jimmy Heath, Benny Golson. Who else did you have from Philly?
Oh, well, there's tons of them,
Yeah. I mean, at that time.
But it was interesting at that time. As a really young kid, there was an alto player. You probably heard of him. Maybe not too many people. Clarence Sharp, C Sharp.
Oh yeah, C Sharp. Yeah.
Now C Sharp was. I mean, he was kind of a street person. I mean, he was a wonderful player. I mean, he was a great. I mean, he was kind of. He was an essential jazz player. His whole life was jazz life, quote unquote, and he played great. And so he would lead us around, a little bit.
Oh wow.
Take us to places, to jam sessions, and like.
That's cool.
And Randy Brecker, Randy is 5 years younger than I, and he started really early. He played quite well, and he was 15.
Okay.
So anyway, there was a lot of stuff going on. There were a lot of interesting musicians who were nice to you. I mean, it wasn't like it was.
I think this may be the first time that I can remember, at least during an interview that I'm doing, where C Sharp was mentioned. I remember C Sharp when I used to sneak into clubs when I was like 15, 16.
In New York, in
New York,
in Endowment or someplace.
Or bottom. Well, where?
What clubs?
I don't know. Bottom line.
I used to run into him in the Dom.
Village Gate.
Okay.
Or, probably like
Now he was a special individual.
How would you describe C Sharp? Just because we're capturing this for the archives.
Well, I mean, from what I like as a young person, I didn't what did I know? But when he played, it was like the essence of the music. It was no. It wasn't like. It wasn't intellectual. It was just he captured the essence and the spirit of music, especially coming from Philadelphia. There's a kind of a tradition
Right.
that exists there, and he I remember we played at a jam session. There was I went to school with a bass player, John Lamb. I don't know, he played with Duke Ellington eventually.
Okay.
And wound up at a jam session, and C Sharp shows up, and he barred my tenor. Killed me, man. He said, I realized how far I had to go, and so.
Doing it with your horn.
Yeah, he took my horn and kicked my ass with my own horn, and that's not nice. But it was an education. I mean, It was just like, wow, this guy can really play, and and he was an alto player.
And then did it on tenor.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Playing. So, do you remember seeing any of the other cats I mentioned, like Benny Golson?
Well, for some reason I didn't see Benny.
Oh.
Now we're we're friendly, but Jimmy, I saw Jimmy, a fair amount of times. And my one experience with Jimmy is, I was like 20 years old, and I got a gig in the club opposite Jimmy.
Okay.
And Jimmy just got out of being incarcerated for some kind of he was a bad boy for a while, but and so he came on. He's playing. He was like, he was intimidating. He was really great. And I said, Mr. Heath, can you give me a lesson? He said, no. He dissed me.
Oh,
So after I still bring it up, you know,
I
through
bet
these
you do.
through these years, we played in Clark Terry's band together for a long time, and you know, we've done a fair amount of things together. And every once in a while I bring it up. I said, "Man, you should have given me that lesson." When you know, now he's a professor.
Right.
Now it's Professor Heath. You know, he's taught like 1 million people.
Right.
And then he didn't want to deal with one turkey like me.
Mm.
But
So you guys laugh about it?
no,
Oh, really?
he
Oh,
I don't think
okay.
he finds it funny. But
And you definitely didn't find it funny then.
I didn't find it funny then. I was disappointed because I knew
Yeah.
I couldn't play well, and I was trying too hard. And
So, okay, now it's very interesting, the scene you're talking about and the apprenticeship process that you're talking about. You know, jam sessions, and you're really trying, you know conceptually what you're trying to get to. You got Al Cohn as a model. You felt this really powerful spiritual thing, hearing Train in this club, and you didn't know, but you're drawn to this, so you love it, you're passionate about it. What did it take for you to be able to transition from beginner to intermediate, and then to go on from there to mastery?
It's obviously an evolution, and I went through, like I said, Al, who I loved, and you know, he was also became, you know, when I moved to New York later, he became important again.
Okay.
And you know, Sonny Rollins, I love to hear Sonny Rollins is amazing. And then Coltrane, and I got into this thing. I became like a Coltrane clone, another one.
That was in the 60s,
in
right?
the 60s,
Yeah.
very early.
Okay.
Very early. Giant steps. Tried to play giant steps. I had to get rid of my tenor. I couldn't play giant steps on my con. It was too hard. So I traded it in for a Selmer balanced action. And I could manipulate it. I could execute a little better.
Okay.
But anyway, I got into that, and then
Did you you took clarinet lessons.
yeah.
Did you take any other lessons?
Well, basically, I didn't study the saxophone a lot, just a little bit.
Okay.
I kind of pretty much developed my own way of doing it,
Okay.
which is, I could do a whole thing about that. But basically, I realized at a certain point in my life that, I can't go on doing this. I can't. People would actually come and say, I heard this guy playing and it sounded just like Train, you know.
Saying that about you.
Yeah, and I said, well, but that's wrong. I mean, it's totally wrong. I mean,
Were you like in your mid-20s?
I was like 21, 22.
21, 22. Well, I mean, let me give you a quick anecdote. A friend of mine, Playthell Benjamin, fellow writer, he heard Michael Brecker, fellow Philly tenor player, and he went up to him and he said, "Man, you sure, you sound a lot like Train." But he didn't say it in a complimentary way.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "You're an imitator."
Yeah.
So Michael went over to me and said, "Well, he was God," and just walked away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I didn't feel, I don't approach it that way. I figured like, I have to find, first of all, if you're going to play jazz music, you have to find who you are. You have to make a personal statement. At a certain,
your voice.
yeah, at a certain point, actually I realized at a certain point that I'm not going to be the next Bird. And I thought, we always dream that, there's this dream that you're going to be the next great innovator, the great person to change music. And then you start to realize that, well, maybe the most important thing is to be able to make a personal expression. So I would hear other guys imitating Coltrane, a lot of white guys, and playing in bands, and I said, boy, they sound really bad. I said, well, maybe I sound just as bad. So I have to try to find a way. So there was a guy, trombone player, his name was Leo Fogel. He was a little older than me, and he had a record collection of, older records. He was into the tradition.
Right.
So I went over his place, and he played me recordings of most of the great tenor players. He played Lester. Now, how do you not like Lester? I mean, Lester is so, there's nothing not to like or not to be able to relate to, put it that way. And then Ben Webster, and I said, wow, that's amazing. Don Byas, never heard anybody play the tenor like Don Byas. And he played Hawkins, and I couldn't get it.
Oh, really?
I couldn't get Hawkins because coming from that, the train reality,
Right.
sound,
Right.
time feel, the whole concept. All of a sudden I'm hearing the sound that was hard to relate to, and it was very complicated. So I wasn't ready for Hawkins. So I wasn't mature enough. But years later, a couple of years later, the light bulb went off, and I said, wow, that's the real truth. That's the whole basis. But by listening to all these people, then when I would hear Sonny Rollins, I could really, appreciate it. I said, wow, that's Lester. That's Chu Berry. That's all these things would kind of like sneak out, And I said, well, that's the secret. The secret is, secret. It's the, you take all these influences and you put it in a pot and you mix it up and something personal comes out. The influences are always evident.
Right.
But it goes beyond. It becomes something else. So you take that and it's the path to who you are. So that was the beginning of seed was planted. So I would listen to other, try to deal with the history. I tried to develop in parallel motion. I'd be listening to the earlier players, but they were new to me. So that was new music to me. And then, from listening to Train to somebody else, that was another kind of development. And I would try to go out. I used to play free music, free jazz too, and whatever. So anyway, all these things are going on at once, and all of a sudden, like, it starts to come together, and it takes a long time, and like. I don't want to get too far ahead, but
Well, no, I want you to know it's okay to jump around.
It's like you play with a drummer who has a great cymbal beat, and it's a big cymbal beat, and it accommodates everything. It accommodate any player, any style. So when I started to develop all these aspects, they started to come. I used to be able to do I could do imitations kind of
Other players.
Not exactly, but I could get the aura of all these players. I could just put myself into that. But
into that zone.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that later, but
you can go there now.
Remember that thing with Ben Webster?
What?
With we had that little talk here.
Oh yes, right. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was like, well, I'm gonna bring that up in a minute, but
okay.
But I realized that anybody can do a bias. Not anybody, but you can do a Bias, you can do a Lester, you can do a Ben Webster, but that's not the point. The point is to get all these feelings inside you. There are only 12 notes that we deal with. So everybody played the same notes. I mean, Hawkins was at least as complicated as Bird. But it was the way Charlie Parker's sound and time feeling and everything was radically different. And Lester was a bridge in a way, Lester Young. Hawkins was a great brute and intellectual giant. So you kind of try to absorb all these feelings, and then you come in when you're thrown into. I used to get thrown into situations, like I'd play with Freddie, and then I had to play. I'm in Nice, and then I have to play with George Wein and Slam Stewart, and I had never done it, and then all of a sudden, hey, I can do that. It's because I've heard this music. I haven't played it, but I heard it. And it was a part. It became inside. It was inside of me, and I could go from, and it was just didn't have to make any real major adjustment, put it that way. It just like, it becomes like a Zen thing.
Okay.
You play, I would play in the spirit and off of the feeling and at the moment. So that's why I try to encourage young players to, the tenor saxophone didn't start with Coltrane.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't start, they think, they go back to Hank Mobley and think that's really old.
Right.
Nobody wants to deal with Hawkins because Hawkins is overwhelming, to be honest.
Okay, what is it? And by the way, there's a book up here. Just want
Yeah,
to get this for a second.
Yeah, I know.
There's a,
Oh.
Oops, I messed up. Let me see. Okay.
Okay.
So let me say it right quick and then we.
Yeah.
This book, The Birth of Bebop, A Social and Musical History, Scott DeVoe argues very strongly that Coleman Hawkins is really like one of the fathers, not the father of bebop.
Well, because like Hawkins was a huge star. I mean, he was really, really big. He was the guy, and he hired Thelonious Monk. Now everybody thought Thelonious Monk was crazy, and they would criticize Hawkins and say, "Well, when are you going to get a real piano player and start playing jazz again?" I mean, they wanted to hear him play with Teddy Wilson, which is incredible. I mean, that's some incredible music. But he heard something in Monk, and like Hawkins was a truly avant-garde person. I mean, he went through the whole thing. He was in the forefront of so much. So in a way, he was one to encourage Dizzy and Miles, and so he was interested in the bebop harmonic concept on those recordings, early recordings of Woody and You, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, let me ask you this, because I have a late friend, Michael James, who was Ruth Ellington's son, Duke's nephew, and he really loved Hawk's, harmonic sense. He was like, he never missed a change,
No, I never missed a change.
So when it came to bebop, like Don Byas, he could easily adapt himself to the harmonies because he was a master.
Yeah, and Don Byas is another. Yeah, he had no problem dealing with, bebop.
Okay.
So, that was so Hawkins. Is such a major factor, and I did a thing a couple of years ago, a centennial thing at Kansas, the D.C. What is it? That the Casey Jazz Club in Kennedy Center.
Oh, Kennedy Center, yeah.
And I did a Hawkins thing, and in fact, Lou Donaldson came over with me and said, "Oh man, that was great what you did." And Lou Donaldson doesn't like anything.
So that was a high compliment,
So
man.
I called up the producer, and I said, "Lou Donaldson liked it. It must be good."
He was sitting right here, so believe me, I know from what you speak. Yeah, so that was high praise.
Yeah, so
That's high praise.
So I said, Becca Pullian, she was the producer. I said, Lou Donaldson liked it, man. I could have done a lot better, but anyway, he liked it. So that was cool. So I'm thinking of talking about Hawkins. I did a few Hawkins tribute kind of things. I don't want to do that too much, but with Hawkins, it's important that people are aware somehow of what his contribution to music was. I did, back to that thing, like we did a little supposedly panel thing. There were only two of us.
Yeah.
About Ben Webster.
Right.
And he played what the Duke thing, Single Petal of a Rose.
Right.
It's the most beautiful sound you could possibly imagine. And Michael Hashim.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's a great. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was here, and he came up with this great line.
Mark Hashim. Yeah.
Not,
Is it Michael?
Michael.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And he came up with this line, tonal virtuosity.
Yeah.
And So, wow, that's great. That's a great line, because when you talk about virtuosity, it's always this.
Right.
But what about
The sound.
this?
Right.
You know, and Ben Webster's sound, Toshko came up with this description of tragic beauty, which is, because he could make himself cry. I mean, but
yeah.
one time Faddis hired me to do this Black, Brown, and Beige with Ralph Ellison's posthumous book release a few years back
Oh,
at
yeah?
which church? What one church?
Abyssinian.
One of the church could have been. I forgot which
Here
church.
in New York, though?
Yeah. So
Okay.
anyway, I was given the Ben Webster part.
Wow.
A lot of stuff. I mean, and Duke supposedly wrote out some of the, the cadenzas and stuff. And I really tried really hard to get it right. And I did the gig, and I thought I did pretty good. But when I got out, after the gig was over, I couldn't get out of Ben Webster.
Oh, really?
I was like, I entered his world, and it's a world that is like, it's a special world, and I was trapped in this world. And I felt like, if you're a method actor and you're playing a part and you get into the character too much, I can imagine what they go through. So I decided after that, I said, no more. I can't allow myself to do that, because it's really, it's not cool. It's like you totally lose your
own identity.
That's why I don't listen so much to music jazz music as much as I should, because sometimes it's more of a distraction. And like when you're young, you in your head you hear other people playing, and then when you finally find an identity, you hear a tune, you hear yourself playing it, which is it's an interesting transition. I think when I turned 40, I was starting to be able to recognize my identity.
Huh.
In fact, Jimmy Heath heard me play. We were playing in Nice or something, and he said, "Hey man, your sound changed, man. Your sound has really got big and blah blah blah. Hey, but you're 40 now, so that's what's supposed to happen." And like, if you pass the dangerous period, like where because my pharmacist is a jazz fan. Around the corner, he plays music all day and all night. I mean, he's always, every time I go in there, he's asking me questions, and he mentioned the fact that so many guys died at such a young age. And I said, yeah, but there's another factor. If you get past that and you get into your 40s, I remember Zoot Sims was also very important to me. He helped me out in a lot of ways when I first came to New York. And I remember we were at the old Half Note, and he came off the bandstand, and he said to me, he said, for the first time in my life, I feel confident when I'm on the bandstand. And at that point, he was 40-something, and I always thought, well, Zoot always played great. I couldn't imagine him not being confident, something like
Now
that.
that's deep, because Four Brothers,
Well, that's long before.
with Woody Herman,
Yeah.
and, that would have been like in the early 50s?
Yeah.
And so 15 years later or so
Yeah.
is when he really...
Yeah, and like I thought about it, and at first I was actually emotionally touched. Then he would actually confide that in me.
Yeah, right.
Some little schmuck, like some like beginner, know nothing saxophone player, and he said that, and also years later I thought about it. I said, now I understand what Zoot was talking about. That it took him, all that time to feel like, he really was, his voice was secure, and he was
Right.
secure.
That's a part of that apprenticeship process.
I mean, I'll give you an example. I was talking to Wynton, like in 97, 98. And I said to Wynton, who came out with a recording with strings in 1995. Now, when he first came on the scene in the early 80s, he did a strings recording called Hot House Flowers. So I said to him, I said, man, I said, this recording here in 95, I forget the title of it. I said, man, in fact, I heard it at his place before it came out, when he was listening to like the master or whatever you call it, right before they come out with it. And he said, man, this is one of the only ones that really captures my sound, he said. But I said, this sounds so much better than Hot House Flowers. You know what he said? He said, man, I was trying to learn how to play. Now, of course, his publicity at the time, the great Wynton Marsalis, classical jazz, but he said, I was trying to learn how to play.
That's right, and he's still trying to learn how to play, and we're all trying to learn how to play. And that's the whole name of the game. It's like got me through my teenage years was Jean-Paul Sartre and all that existential shit,
Okay.
And like he would say, one of the important things is like the concept of in becoming.
Okay.
You're never a musician. You're in the
becoming.
process of becoming a musician. So
Right.
you're like, I guess maybe that's what they say, practicing law, practicing medicine. So it's the process. You're always in the process. So once you realize that, and then also once you realize the fact that it's unending, I'm sure everybody on every level, like I'm sure Bird felt it, and it's the fact that you're never going to reach perfection. Just do the best you can and keep on pushing and I wrote a tune called Chasing the Carrot, which is like, I usually have to explain it because people are not sophisticated enough. But anyway, it's just like, it's the process, and you have as long as you're physically able to do it, you should be able to get better.
And that's certainly Sonny Rollins' attitude, who's like, seems like he's never satisfied.
It can't be. Nobody says it. Clark's line was, one of his
Clark
lines
Terry.
was, there's a fine line between a groove and a grave. So when you feel like you got it together, that's when you're going down. Once in a while you actually feel kind of a little bit confident. You feel like, hey, I think I maybe had a breakthrough. I think I found something, and but that doesn't last too long. And then you realize that, well, okay, I got to work harder. I've got to get my music to be more expressive, or I have to get, work on my sound, like talking about, the tonal aspect.
Right.
And that's, I don't know if I should jump to this, but what I've been working on lately, I've been working on my flute playing.
Okay.
Because I started out as playing the flute, but I was not really serious.
Right.
And then I started to realize I didn't particularly like jazz flute.
Okay.
Because I started to hear sound. I started listening to classical flute music.
Okay.
A lot of French music.
Okay. Who are some of the people?
Like in those days was Julius Baker, Jean-Pierre Rampal, and when I was a kid, William Kincaid. Those were the players at the time.
Okay.
And I started to hear something different, and when I would play, I would do these improvisations that sounded more like, like French music than jazz music. And the better my sound got, the more difficult it was to play in a quote-unquote jazz way. So once the other side of my brain started moving in another direction.
Huh.
And schizophrenia started to happen. So I tried to leave, like the tenor saxophone is, there's incredible tradition. We talked about a little bit about that with Hawkins and the whole deal.
Right.
But the flute doesn't have, it's a minor jazz instrument, and Frank West was, I guess, you would consider him like the Coleman Hawkins of the flute.
The first one that really made it a solo
play it
instrument.
with integrity. They're guys that they tooted around,
Right.
like superficial little, players.
Right.
It was a novelty, and so they got a lot of people made a lot of money on this novelty instrument. But Frank played it. He created a whole genre.
Okay, just like we did with the tenor, I do want to take a little time now, since you brought this up, and I want to get back to where you are now and your progression, but I want to talk about, because we got you here, man, and you're one of the, preeminent exemplars of a unique style on jazz flute. So I want to talk about the lineage of jazz flute. I want to ask you about a player, and I want you to expound.
I'm going to get into trouble with this one, man.
Hey, man, you already started out with Frank West.
Yeah.
So what would you say about Frank?
Well, Frank he's a. My vocabulary is getting weaker.
Paterfamilias, the kind of the
No,
father in a
he's
sense.
the root of
Jazz flute.
Jazz flute. He found a way to play in a very elegant manner,
Okay.
and with respect for the instrument, instrumental integrity,
Okay.
and dignity. He's the essential jazz flute player, probably.
Okay.
I mean, there have been people came on like Hubert. Was probably the best technical flute player.
We're gonna get to Hubert, but before Hubert, what about James Moody?
James Moody found a way to articulate bebop on the flute. So he basically played the same thing he played on the saxophone on the flute, but he found a way to articulate his. I love Moody. We were tight. We have the same birthday, so.
Oh wow.
But Moody found a way to basically the articulation is not. He found his own little thing, and
Okay.
so it's a special. That's his own special little thing.
Okay.
He's a great musician.
Mm-hmm. And then what about Herbie Mann?
Herbie Mann, sad flute player.
Ooh.
I mean, nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't much of a flute player. He was very smart, and he came on the scene. He figured out how to exploit that. He became like Benny Goodman and the clarinet, Herbie Mann and the flute. But
Okay.
he wasn't a great flute player.
Okay. Thank you for your candor.
He's dead. I guess he can't come here. Herbie was the kind of guy say, I've got my style and he's got his kind of thing.
Okay. Did you ever play flute with Frank West on the same stage?
Oh yeah, of course.
What was that spirit? What was that experience like?
Well, we played in our band, Tosco's band for a while, but that was different. And a couple times
Frank played both flute but he played first alto, didn't
he
he?
played first alto, but
Right.
there's a lot of flute in
Right.
the first alto.
Right,
But all
right.
and he would be featured on a couple tunes.
Okay.
In fact, we had Tosco wrote a tune called I think it was called Peace, written for Frank.
Okay.
And we had to do we played this big piece, Hiroshima piece, in Hiroshima, the anniversary of the bomb dropping. We actually did a live video and recording,
Wow.
and Wishing Peace was the name of the tune.
Mhm.
Tosco said, "This is Frank's tune, but would you play it? Because I think it's appropriate, for this concert." And I had to think about it. I said, "Well, Frank established, the thing." And so I did play it, and actually it came out good because I left a little bit of Frank in there.
Okay.
Not just came out
Right.
because I had heard him play it,
Right.
and I was able to personalize it, and do it. But
Okay.
yeah, we did a couple little flute things and like flute convention kind of things. But
Okay.
Not a lot.
What about Moody?
Moody, I never played flute with Moody. I played saxophone with Moody.
Okay. Two tenors?
Two tenors, yeah.
Okay.
And so anyway,
Okay.
I got away. you know, all these people you're talking about, you know, like we only, you know, whether you like them or not, or it's still a minor kind of thing. You're getting the tenor saxophone, you're naming like 100 people.
Oh, no question, no
You know,
question.
and so here you got a few people that you came up with, and then there's some other people.
What
you
about
know.
Hubert Law?
Oh, Hubert, like I said, Hubert is the best technical, best flute player because his classical background is impeccable. And
I always remember, man, you did this blindfold test for downbeat.
uh-oh.
This might be back in like the early 80s or something like that. And they put on Hubert.
Mm.
And I think what you said was, you said, you know, it's too perfect. The guy doesn't make a mistake. You know?
No, he wouldn't allow himself to make a mistake. I mean, but he's great. He's a great flute player. I mean, like, you know, he went his direction is, you know, is different. But I mean, he's an amazing flute player. He actually played and did subs with the New York Philharmonic.
Right, right.
The Met.
Right.
Studied with Julius Baker.
Right.
But anyway, you know, Hubert is, you know, Hubert.
You ever played with Hubert?
Actually, I did.
What was that experience like?
Well, I mean, we actually played duets once.
Really? Publicly or privately?
No, privately. We were doing some school thing. We were playing duets, and you know, he was a good teacher.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
But anyway, I've been working. Well, I had a strange kind of situation.
What?
Remember around the time that I was playing the Gitano, remember we did something?
Yeah.
Well, I was just involved in, I was in some physical, I had some physical problem. And so I'm playing my flute, I think it was at the Gitano, and I'm playing it. First, started out okay, and then all of a sudden I'd be falling apart, you know, like I said, man, people say, oh, you sound great, but I knew I wasn't great, and I wasn't playing well, and I said, well, I either have to give it up, I don't have to play the flute, or I have to really start, you know, to do something. So I'm walking down the street, and I knew there was a place called the Flute Center. I'd never been there.
Huh.
You know, so I walked in there, and there's a million flutes, and there's a bunch of flute players.
Mm-hmm.
The classical players, and they're trying out flutes and stuff, and get to meet them. Some of them knew who I was.
Okay.
Because I made recordings in the past that were considered important from, you know, changing the direction of quote unquote jazz flute.
That's right.
So in fact, a lot of the classical players say, well, you're the only flute player, jazz flute player I listen to because you get a sound, you get a real flute sound. The other, most of the other ones I can't listen to. So anyway, so I meet these people and they start inviting me to concerts, a lot of situations, and I started to get back into the flute world.
Okay.
So my brain started to shift, and I started to, you know, practice more and, you know, try to get back what I lost.
Okay.
And now I'm at the point where I'm ahead of the game.
All right.
I think I've run it, you know, I really, you know, I'm 71. I only need 30 more years to be a contender. But I don't know if I'm going to make it. But, you know, hanging out with some really great players, and they respect my they respect my sound, basically.
Okay.
So I'm inspired again.
Good. That's great, man. How would you describe your own flute style?
Well, basically, when I developed my own world, basically my own sound and my own approach. But when I play the flute, it's a very narrative approach.
Okay.
It's like it's a storytelling approach. So when I play, if I play the saxophone, I can play a tune and blah blah blah. Sometimes I want to play narratively, but the flute, I have to tell a story. So it's people will say, well, sometimes you sound like Asian sound. Like, well, if I'm trying to do that feeling, if I want to do it, sometimes I can hypnotize myself and do like a Zen kind of thing, and all of a sudden, I'm in another place. I'm telling another story. Another time, I've been working on doing Duke Ellington's Sunset and the Mockingbird. So I try to I put myself in the bird world,
Okay.
not the Charlie Parker bird
Right,
world,
right,
but even
right.
actually in the solo, I kind of do. But anyway, so I'm trying to tell a story every time I play the flute. I'm very careful with the material that I use, and I basically, I'm a narrative player.
Okay, now the Asian, I want to get to the Asian piece, and I want to talk about the love of your life, you know, while you drink a little water. But first, I do want to ask you just about two more flute players. Two more. What do you think of Dave Valentine?
Well, he's very good. I mean, I've only heard him on records and stuff. In fact, we did do one thing. We did a tribute to Herbie Mann at the Blue Note.
Okay.
And he was there, and he told me, he said that he told me that I was an important influence on his developing as a flute player, because he was originally a percussionist.
Right.
And you can hear it the way he plays.
That's right.
He's really got the Latin reality. He's got a nice sound. He sounds more like Hubert to me, in his approach.
Well, he studied with Hubert.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
you didn't know it, but he did.
Well, I could hear it. I don't know if
Okay.
he studied with him, but I could hear he's,
Right.
and he's a wonderful flute player.
Okay. All right.
He's, it's a Latin, it's a different reality, but he because of his percussion background, I guess it makes it, more natural for him to do that.
Okay. I'll come back to the other flute player, but can you tell us how you met Toshiko?
Well, it was, I think it was around 1966, something like 6 or 7. I'm not good with years.
It's okay.
Oh, they all run together. I was playing with Clark Terry's band. It was an all-star band that I was the only un-all-star in the band, because I'm going to do a little prelude to this story.
Okay.
Because I hadn't been it must have been around 66. I hadn't been in New York very long. I moved to New York in 65, and we hang out in Jim and Andy's at the Musicians Bar. It was a great place to hang. And I'm there on a Wednesday night, and Zoot is there, and he's kind of had one too many. And he says, man, Clark is rehearsing at the Half Note with a big band, and I don't feel like doing it. Why don't you do it? So I did it. Next week, make sure I'm at the same place at the same time. Wednesday night at Jim and Andy's. Zoot is in the same condition. And he says, hey, man, why don't you do it? So I kept on doing it, and Zoot didn't want to play in a big band anyway. It's not his thing.
Yeah.
And so Phil Woods was playing first alto. He says, I don't think Zoot wants to do this. So why don't you may as well do it. You've been rehearsing. So that's how I got my first gig with a major, all-star band.
That's important.
So so I was playing one tenor, and George Coleman was playing the other one.
Wow.
And so Toshiko was subbing for Don Friedman, who was piano player, because he couldn't do one gig. And meanwhile, she was preparing to do a town hall concert. She saved up. She went on the road, and for a year playing at Holiday Inns, save up enough money to put on her own concert at Town Hall. So she had a few big band charts, and she hired Joe Farrell to do it, one of the tenors, and Joe canceled. He said, I have to go to California with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis. So she calls a contractor, who is Bill Berry, and he says, oh, there's a new guy in town. He plays just as good as Joe, this guy, Lew Tabackin, and she said, I never heard of him. So anyway, I'm playing, and the piano, the piano is, the bandstand was like inside the bar. The rhythm section was on one side, and the horns were on the other side. Piano player is like this, can't see anybody. So she hears, first tune is like this D flat blues, you know. And so at that point I was kind of in this, trying to develop this, was a cross pollinated style. I was still a little bit in the Coltrane thing, but I was trying to get sound to be a little bit more, you know, fuller and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So she hears me. She knew it wasn't George, you know, because she knew George Coleman's. So she calls for contact. I heard the guy, this is the guy I want in the band, and she described me. She said, oh, that's the guy I was telling you about. So anyway, that's how we met. The difficult thing was that she hired me for the gig, and I called her, and then I canceled. I said, I'm going out with Thad and Mel's band to California. So
Has
I was
Joe
like,
Farrell had done?
yeah.
Oh.
So I said, but Eddie Daniels is here. You know, I talked to Eddie Daniels,
Okay.
and he's cool for it. And you know, there's obviously no problem with that.
Wow.
And
So how did your paths cross?
so that's how that. So that she was pissed off, but she had a couple small group gigs, and she hired me for it, and that's how we met. And I think it was '66.
Okay. And how long was it before you started going out?
Shortly after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did you get married?
69.
69. Okay. Okay.
So anyway, that's got that out of the way. I thought that was general knowledge, but
It may not be general knowledge 50 years from now for those who are watching this.
Okay.
You see what I mean? See, so.
so anyway, that's that story.
Now, what about, I mean, big part of your career is the big band, which
Well, that's a long time later.
we made fleeting reference to, but how did that come about?
Well, this is another complicated story. Starts in basically in early '70s. It was like it was basically like a black revolution in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther King assassination, and it was a whole
Black Power.
It was for white jazz players. It wasn't a good time.
Mm.
You know, you can sympathize with the revolution. You can be for it and support it, but on the other hand, it's not helping me as an individual.
Right.
So like I used to play with Duke Pearson's band, and Duke was a great guy and a wonderful musician, and he was A&R man, A&R person at Blue Note.
Uh-huh.
And he's trying to get me a record contract, also Randy Brecker, and no, they weren't recording any white players.
Wow.
I think there was one white saxophone player that got recorded, and he was more like a popish kind of guy at the time, John Clemmer. I don't know if you know him. But anyway, so the situation was, it was kind of rough, and we would go out and play, and played at the Apollo for 2 weeks, and Randy and I weren't allowed to play solos. We had to keep a low profile. wasn't too cool.
Wow.
So there was a lot of
Tension. And,
yeah, it was not a good time. And so I got an offer. 1972. I was doing some gigs with Doc Severinsen to make some bread.
Mm-hmm.
My income went from $4,000 to $19,000 in 1 year. It was, you know.
By playing with Doc.
Yeah, but Doc, and also led to other kind of quasi-studio situations.
How'd you hook up with Doc? Because I know Clark.
Arnie Lawrence.
Arnie Lawrence. Okay.
Arnie Lawrence was playing with Doc, and then they put together some kind of stupid show, like a show. Snooky was on. That's some great musicians.
Young,
Snooky
yeah.
Young was on it.
It's funny. Some of the people you're naming, Arnie Lawrence, I heard him probably on some of those same gigs I heard with C Sharp. I mean, some of these names that I haven't even heard.
Yeah,
of.
Arnie was, you know, he was, but that's a whole. Unfortunately, you won't have him to interview. But
yeah. But just for the sake of the archives, tell us quickly about Arnie Lawrence.
Well, Arnie was an interesting character. he was a very gifted person. He was like a natural player in a sense. He didn't know any much.
You mean
But
technically or
yeah, like
theoretically?
theoretically, but he could
Yeah.
just play. You know, Ben Webster really liked him because he showed up on the gig and somehow it was jams, some situation. I'm not sure if I have it right. His son was telling me about it, Eric, that Arnie showed up and Ben Webster started playing some tune and it was really he used to play some weird keys, and Arnie just played. It didn't matter to him, and you know, so he had
So
no.
Ben Webster like that?
Yeah, he didn't have any. It didn't. You know, he just played. So.
Okay.
But he wound up playing. He was playing with Doc Severinsen for a long time in the small groups, and
Okay.
which he made some. He had a family to support,
Mm-hmm.
and when Doc, and like I did. I guess I did some gigs with him in other situations, and he liked me, and we got along well, and so he recommended me for that, and which was not very musical, but it was.
A good paying
Yeah, I
gig.
could make a few bucks to support my jazz career because we could spend 2 hours talking about what that was like. I used to play for $5 a night, man, and 6 nights a week.
Well, that's a part of the reality.
Yeah, well, and I was very happy to have it, but I couldn't afford it, but I was happy to be able to play every night. But anyway, he would recommend me on gigs, and he
Who, Doc?
no Arnie.
Arnie, okay.
So Arnie, you know, hooked me up with him, and then the band moved to Los Angeles, Tonight Show,
Right.
and Arnie was doing the Tonight Show. So you know, Doc Severinsen says, "Why don't you move to Los Angeles? I'll give you a certain amount of nights on the Tonight Show. And we can do this and blah blah blah." Meanwhile, I had a friend, John B. Williams, bass player, who was on the band. He says, "Hey," he moved to Los Angeles. "Oh man, it's great out here. Man, I'm working all the time. I'm playing with this guy and that guy." He painted this beautiful picture, and I'm saying, "Well, okay, sounds okay. Maybe the music might be quite as good, but I'll be playing more, and I won't have to deal with that other thing." And
You mean like poverty?
you know, not poverty and racism, reverse
Oh, right,
racism.
right. In the
you know,
early
in the
70s.
West Coast, it's a B position of that. You know.
Okay. Right.
And that's what a world we live in. So anyway, I never forgot that after, you know, before I left for LA, I went to the Vanguard, you know, and say goodbye to people, and I ran into some, you know, who did I run into? This trumpet player. Oh man. Early, kind of an early bebop trumpet player. He was.
Howard McGee?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Wow, how'd you get that? So Howard, I told Howard, you know, I used to play a little bit with him, and I said, "Yeah, I'm going to move to California." He says, man, if you can't make it here in New York, no, who can make it? It's like he considered it a defeat, you know. That I
Was going to the West Coast.
But then it was, in a way. I went, and I go to California, and first night in Los Angeles, never forgot it, I went to Dante's Jazz Club with a friend of mine, Dick Spencer, alto player, and they had this group with Lorenzo Almeida, guitar player, and I hadn't had any food, so I ordered some food, and I'm eating the salad, and it was so quiet, it sounded like the Third World War in my head, you know, the lettuce. And they're playing in this, and then all of a sudden they brought on the rhythm section and the alto player, Gary Foster, and I said, "Oh no, maybe I won't feel so uncomfortable." Well, it was almost the same. and then immediately I got a gig. The owner of Dante's, I guess, had some kind of reputation. He gave me 4 Wednesday nights.
Okay.
So I could go in. First Wednesday night, I didn't know many people. I had John Williams playing bass. In those days, he played upright bass, kind of like Sam Jones, kind of a thing.
Okay.
And the only drummer I knew was this guy, Steve Schaefer, used to play with Sarah Vaughan and I think maybe Chick Corea or some people, but he was a good drummer. We just did a trio. That's what I was doing in New York, and just playing tunes, and maybe a little improvised stuff in between the tunes. And it was like Professor Irwin Corey, you know him? Comedian.
Yeah.
He once introduced the band once, and he said like, his definition of a fugue is when the music comes in and the people go out. Well, that was my gig at Dante's. It started out like the place was packed. By the end of the first set, there were 3 guys at the bar.
Oh
A
my
musician, a
God.
bass player. I never forgot Herbie Mickman as the bass player, and a couple
Oh,
other people.
wow.
And that was, and I realized I think I made a mistake.
Mm.
So what, you know, how am I going? And then I would get gigs playing with other groups, and they would play and I would play. It was just like, it was when I played, it was another band. It was, I just was like a fish out of water.
Oh, wow.
And so I said, well, wait. And then I'm getting all these calls to play in big bands because of my reputations. I haven't played with Duke Pearson's band, Clark's band,
Right.
Adam Mell's band, Joe Henderson's band.
Right.
So
Did you say Joe Henderson?
I played in his band. I was an original member of his band. But that's,
Oh, man.
yeah, I didn't get, there was some revisionist history went down on that album that was.
Okay, what's the...
But anyway, that's,
No, well, I mean, this
no,
is-
that was like, I mean, I was in, you know, I played in the band like, and
What
then-
album are you talking about?
well, there was a recording, Joe Henderson Big Band was, finally they recorded the big band.
Okay.
And not only did they not ask me to play in it, which was okay, I wasn't playing in other bands at the time, but when the liner notes, they never mentioned that they got the personnel wrong of the original band, like the sax section.
When was the recording originally recorded?
It was recorded, well, it was done, see, Joe had a band around 1967,
Right.
and we used to work for the door mostly, you know, like $5 maybe. I you know, if I had money, I would give it. I said, you give it to somebody else. And
Right.
I'm sure he probably kept it, but anyway, he was playing great. I mean, he was playing so good. And he was strong and younger, and it was really quite an interesting band because it was a very rough sounding band because his orchestration was, you know, I guess self-taught, and which is cool, and so it had like a Dizzy Gillespie kind of roughness, like
Okay.
his band had,
Mm-hmm.
and just to hear him play, you know, it was really great. So I enjoyed playing in that band,
Mhm.
even though
I'm gonna, because for the sake of the audience, we usually take a break at like 7:30, and we just kept flowing. So I want to ask the audience. Well, first, let me inform you that there's water in the back. If you're thirsty, you can get up and get some water in the back.
there's a restroom.
And there's a
over
restroom outside, like around the corner, or that way. So I just wanted you to know that, because we didn't take a break. We have about 20-25 minutes left. And I want to also let you know that I'm going to let you get in here and ask some questions, but I want to first get
Okay,
to,
the big band.
there you go.
So anyway, that was, I'm in Los Angeles playing in stupid bands that guys are just practicing to get the chops together to write for TV shows, whatever.
Okay.
So I casually mentioned to Toshiko, I said, you know you have a few charts that you did in Town Hall, blah, blah, blah. And and the Musicians Union in LA had a rehearsal hall. And
She was out in
oh yeah,
Oh, so you were-
this was 72 at that
right,
point.
because
yeah.
y'all are
So,
married.
yeah,
right?
we also, you know, her daughter was living with us too at that point.
Okay.
So I said, well, you can get the rehearsal studio at the Union for 50 cents. I mean, 50 cents, half a dollar. Not, you know, like, believe it or not, for 3 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow.
So I'll call the guys and start, you know, put a band together and started rehearsing every Wednesday.
Okay.
I said, if I'm going to play in a band, you know, I like to play in something that makes sense. So it was really rough. First of all, the LA studio musician kind of people, you know, if they can't play something once the first time, it's a problem with the music. It's not a problem with them. They say like, oh, you can't play that. It's impossible. She says, well, it didn't come from anywhere. I mean, I know I heard Dizzy play that, and I heard blah, blah, blah play that. Just because it's written out, you might have to practice it, you know,
Right.
but you'll be able to play it if you work at it. It's not sight reading music. So anyway, we went through trials and tribulations and blah, 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 and we finally got a personnel that made sense. And that's how the band started. We made a recording. We had check this out, a $3,000 budget to make a big band recording.
Wow.
And we did. And it sold 30,000 copies immediately in Japan. I mean, it was like a biggest hit.
Wow.
And just like that. So
Okay.
on the strength of that, we were able to do other recordings, and one thing led to another, and Monterey Jazz Festival, and in those days, when you played in a major festival, the international press was there, so you're on the map.
And you were on the map also because of Downbeat, because you guys are winning,
Yeah.
you know, the critics polls.
Yeah, we were winning a lot of, you know, we were with that. And then my situation was, you know, I figured out that, okay, I'm here in Los Angeles. I don't feel quite natural here, but I have to develop my own entity. And John Hurd brought Billy Higgins over to my place one day, and we played, and I said, oh, man, it's not me, it's them. Because it was like heaven. I said, I played for 4 bars, and I said, my God, I'm back. I'm you know, so I started to.
That's something, just playing with the right
Oh
person.
boy,
right?
I mean, I always felt that when I played with some of the guys, the younger guys in Los Angeles, felt like they were negative players. There's no joy. There's no.
Wow.
It was all thinking and no feeling. So I did a lot of playing with Bill. You know, I did a lot of trios.
I got to give you a chance to talk about Billy Higgins, man, because I mean, I was talking to Jimmy Heath. Jimmy Heath wrote a song called "Smiling Billy."
Yeah.
So.
Oh, Billy Higgins was like, here's an example. I did a recording called "The Black and Tan Fantasy," and so we're doing it. And I decided I wanted to do this tune "After You've Gone" really fast.
Okay.
You know, so I'm playing it, and you know, it's okay. Billy says, "No, let's do it again. We can do better." Okay, do it again. Nah, we can do better. Kept on doing it. Like most of the time, when you go in the studio with you know, musicians, especially ones of a certain caliber, they say, "Oh, it's great, man." They want to go home.
Right.
You know, okay, it's fine. Just get the bread. You know.
Right.
But Billy kept on pushing it, and it came out. It was really good. I mean, it's kind of scary. I mean, I don't like to listen to it, but after it's too good. So
It's too good.
So afterwards, my fingers. I feel my fingers like it's like I was lifting weights with my fingers. Like all of a sudden,
Really?
man, if I did this every day, and see, that's the whole point of it. It's like in the early periods, you know, people played 6 nights a week, matinees. They're playing every day, and that's why they got great at 20, 25, 20, 30. And it takes people like me all this time. But anyway, it was like I did a tour. We did a trio tour with Billy and Charlie Hayden. We did a month tour. It was before Charlie became, you know, really famous, and we played every night. There was not one night that Billy wasn't perfect. I mean, when I mean perfect, I mean perfect intensity, perfect balance. When you play with him, you never worry about the volume being too much or too little. He played off of the energy that you presented. He didn't like trying to kick your ass like you know, or when he felt like it, like some drummers do, or like you have to play on their terms. He played like perfect collaboration, and perfect form. He played the form like you could hear the harmony. You didn't have to. He outlined the whole form. He was like the best. And I hate to use the word accompany. It's demeaning, but collaborator, put it that way, in drummer, and collaborative drummer in the history of jazz. I mean, in a sense. I mean, I played with Elvin. I mean, we'd have to spend like
Elvin
4
Jones.
hours on all this, you know, stuff that we didn't even touch on.
Right.
But and Elvin was it was special. But you enter Elvin's world in a sense. and it's a wonderful world. It's like it's an incredible world. I miss that too. I mean, I really I miss that. And I was really, when I did play with them, I regret the fact that I was not good enough, or not. I was not. That's the right word. He liked me, you know. He requested me when I subbed for Joe Farrell, but I could have been a better player. It would have been better. But anyway, that's something you can't control.
I just want to. 2 months ago, I think it may be 2 months ago to the day, Michael Carvin was sitting here, and I interviewed him, and we went through a list of drummers. When I mentioned Billy Higgins, he said something along the lines that Billy Higgins was sent here, like he was like heaven sent, you know, that kind of thing. He was just like from another place, you know. Yeah,
well, I mean, anyway, so that got me to feel, you know, better about being away from my natural environment, put it that way.
Okay.
And then I got a call from Shelly Manne. He wanted to form a quartet. Another drummer, a wonderful drummer.
Yes.
Different, you know, aesthetic, but I mean, really serious. He had a swing. His basic swing was more of an older aesthetic.
Okay.
You know, because he grew up in the 40s, played with old Hawkins, Delmas, all those people.
Right.
So I mean, Shelley, and then he had all this. You know, he was very accomplished, and he did all kinds of stuff. So anyway, those were the good things. And then the band was, you know, getting recognition, and we used to go on the road, and we would lose money because I was really stupid. I didn't know how to do things properly, and
like what?
You know, like just the normal things that you do, you know, like booking hotels and that whole deal. Fortunately, I was working, so I could subsidize it.
Okay.
And then it started. Then we started to get like European tours and stuff. We had to change the band because the people were too established in studios. They could go on the road for a length of time.
Right.
The biggest event was we went to Japan in 1970. First tour, I think it was '76, and our first concert in Tokyo. We used to sell out all like huge halls. Our first concert, we had to play everything. They wouldn't let us stop. We played like there was a live album done called Road Time, the double album. Okay. You might have seen it. It was very popular. But anyway.
What was the album? Because this is the one I bought. I'm so bad with names. It's like orange, and I think it has like a geisha on the cover. Around the late '70s, early '80s.
Oh, it could have been Long Yellow Road?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that was like.
That was the first one that came out in America, but the first recording was Kogan. They didn't release it.
Oh, no, Kogan.
Kogan
I had that one too.
Kogan. They didn't release Kogan because they thought it was too. RCA thought it was too far out.
Okay.
It was really stupid. It was like we did a thing called Memory, and it was like a voice track. Spoken voice, and it was kind of distorted, like because memory is distorted. Blah, blah, you know, it was like a touch of happening influence.
Right.
And they said, can you eliminate the voice? And I mean, all kind of stupid stuff. So it took them a while. They released Kogan's second, and Kogan was the first one. That's one that sold 30,000 copies immediately.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, that's the big band.
Now I gotta keep my word and open it up to the audience. If you have any comments or questions for Mr. Lew Tabackin. Yes.
You're talking about how you have kind of, before you're taking saxophone lessons formally, or
Do you mind stating your name?
Dan Lipsitz.
Okay.
You were talking about when you were taking primarily flute lessons, how you kind of developed your own way of practicing saxophone. Could you talk about, I guess, a little how you found your own way? I mean, obviously you talked about gathering a lot of influences, but really what you would practice.
About technical approach?
Yeah, and like how you kind of figured out how to deal with jazz without having a formal,
Well, basically what I did in the beginning was transfer flute concept to the tenor, believe it or not. Because when you deal with the flute, you're dealing with air mainly. Because you don't have a reed. So you deal your air, you know, the diaphragm support, and how you know, has a lot to do with the sound that you get. And so you're dealing with utilization of air. On the tenor, when I heard Don Bias, something went off in my brain. I said, well, let me see, how can I get that big sound and strong sound without being obnoxious, being ugly? It's easy to get a loud, ugly sound, but to get a loud sound with character and be able to deal with all the variations of tone. So I developed, I could show you how to do it if you know, but it's just basically utilizing the warm air, you know, trying to utilize the concept of warm air. All the air from here is warm, air from your chest is cool. So that kind of thing is you can notice a difference in temperature, right, when you go or so utilizing warm air and working on using tons of air on the saxophone, especially on the tenor, because the tenor, you know, and then once you get that, all you have to do is just move your fingers and everything just comes out. So it's so I worked on that, and we could spend like hours on
That
I could
was
show
kind
you,
of deep.
I could show you you know,
That's great.
stuff, you know, how to do that. You know,
Hmm.
if we had a minute, if you want to call me out and come over. Yeah.
Hey. Yes.
How accomplished
State
are
your
you at
name.
Maxwell Estes?
Thanks.
How accomplished are you at music theory?
How accomplished? I don't know what you mean by.
How did you discipline yourself to learn music theory?
Okay. Well, to be honest, I wasn't too disciplined. I went to a conservatory actually, but
For college?
yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't even ask you about that. What?
Well, I mean, it was like, put it this way: I graduated high school, and my parents wanted me to go do something, go someplace, you know. So I was able to get like a scholarship because I played in the orchestra, you know, in the all-state orchestra, whatever it was. But I wasn't really very good, and I didn't want to play the flute. I wanted to play the saxophone, and there was no saxophone program in school, so I had to major in flute.
What's the name of the school?
It was called the Philadelphia Conservatory,
Oh.
which now it morphed into School for the Arts or something.
School for the Arts, okay.
But as far as my discipline, I have to be honest. My discipline wasn't so. My discipline happened later. When I got out of school, I disciplined myself to practice and, you know, develop a routine and stick to it. I used to practice all day. I would play the flute for 4 or 5 hours, and then hit the saxophone, and at the end I'd go through all aspects of it, you know, technical thing, work on the sound, work on harmony, and then at the end of the session I go into a closet and just freak out for 10 minutes. So that was my I was trying to you know, develop the ability to control accidental music, if that makes any sense. So my discipline was, I became disciplined, put it that way. So I don't know if that helps you too.
And thank you for asking that question so we could even bring out about the conservatory. I think, well, let me ask you. Are you studying music theory now?
I'm not studying it in particular at my school, but I am trying to learn it individually.
Uh-huh. Using books, your teacher's books?
I have a private teacher, but she doesn't focus on theory as much unless
What do you
the
play?
music calls for it. I play piano
Piano.
and cello.
So, how about this, to give the young man some advice? What would you suggest to him at this, how long you been playing?
Right now, cello 3 years and piano 9.
How old are
15.
you?
How old are you?
9 years. 15.
15. Okay.
Played
Wow.
9 years. Okay. You probably have a lot of theory under your fingers without even.
Well, it's more of the modes Aeolian Locrian mixo.
Okay, now you're being specific. So can you tell me about maybe? And we haven't talked about modal playing.
Well,
per se.
anyway, I think where's your main interest? As a piano player?
Piano.
Cello?
Piano.
Piano.
Piano. Well, I would suggest that you get a teacher that covers the whole scope. You play classical music,
Yes, classical.
and then as far as jazz improvisation,
I'm not taught in jazz as far as a private teacher. I'm more
Listening,
that's
learning
independent
yourself?
study.
which is not bad. You know, this is pretty. I read this thing in a chamber music magazine about Thelonious Monk, and what I didn't know, and a lot of people don't know or don't believe, was that he was a prodigy, classical piano prodigy, and there was some kind of a competition to get into Juilliard. He was a teenager, and he played the audition, and he came in second. Another guy got it, and people seem to think that it has to do with a kind of a discrimination kind of reality. But anyway, Monk went on to be Monk, you know. And this guy who won the competition shows up on one of Monk's gigs, and he says, Thelonious, you know, you should have won that competition because you were much better than I was. And Monk said, yeah, okay, I'm glad I didn't win. You know, I probably would have, I probably would have not be able to come me, find myself. I would probably gotten lost. And so I think there's an opportunity. Everybody's different. You could learn on your own by listening to people. You know, that's how Toshiko learned. She listened to the records, and she didn't have the records. She'd go to a place where they had them and listen to it and learn how to play by herself. But now that you're in New York, there's so many people that you can hook up with that can make it a little easier for you. So I would investigate, a really good player who has some time, and you could spend with them, and I think it would save you a lot of time. And then also just listen a lot, like I talked about very early. That if you listen to a lot of players and you get a concept in your head of how you would like to approach music, and I think that would be very important. But I would call up Kenny Barron or somebody and say, I know you're busy, but can you recommend somebody that can help me?
And if you hang here, there's a lot of players who come through here, and a lot of people who you can get hooked up through here. So.
I'm from Atlanta.
Oh, you're from Atlanta? I was just in Atlanta. Oh, wow. So you just visiting now?
Well, when you move here.
Well,
save up your money and move here.
for the sake of the tape, I want to make sure to thank all of you for coming, and most especially thank Mr. Lew Tabackin for sharing with us in the flowing way that you did tonight. So let's give him a hand. But yeah, we'll get some more questions.
This is like when you watch Bill Maher and you say you go on the internet for
exactly, because I want to continue. I don't want to cut it off,
Yeah.
and I do want to give you and others a chance to ask some questions. So go right ahead.
Danny Cassell. I mentioned Smalls already, and when you play there, you have this very personal approach to standing on the stage and performing. When did you develop that, and what does it mean to you? How do you do that? How is that part of your
what happened?
presentation?
What basically it's nothing. I think what happened was in years of going to clubs and listening and watching Sonny Rollins play, I enjoyed the fact that he was, well, first his sound was strong enough so he didn't need a microphone, so he didn't have to stand it. He didn't have to do a Wayne Shorter, or a Joe Henderson, where you kind of like, if you get off the mic, you're in trouble. But he was at one with his instrument, one with the room, one with everything. And I found myself kind of doing that kind of thing. And like, I do some weird things sometimes. And people, sometimes I want to hear the sound come off the floor from the bell. There's a unique sound when you're playing that when the sound comes, and I would even do that. And I think I hurt my legs, so I can't do it anymore. But so I just try. I don't think about it. When I look, sometimes I look at a photo or a video, and what am I doing here? It's like it's not the Miles Davis going, not back to the audience thing, but I just go wherever.